We trust the justice system with our lives, relying on the fragile illusion of absolute objectivity. But what happens when the investigators hunting for the truth have a vested interest in hiding it? When prior legal battles make every new clue look dirty, who do you call when the shield itself is compromised? In the heavy, humid heat of May 2001, line searchers comb through the dense, tangled underbrush of Rock Creek Park in the District of Columbia. The deafening roar of news helicopters overhead drowns out the rustle of leaves as desperate search teams look for any sign of a missing federal intern named Chandra Levy. Immense political pressure from the highest offices in the Capitol bears down on the local police department, creating an atmosphere of frantic, suffocating urgency. Detectives face relentless camera flashes and shouting reporters demanding answers about a sitting elected official, completely blinding the investigators to the quiet reality lurking in the woods. The entire nation watches the authorities stumble through glaring missteps and severe tunnel vision. Years later, a press conference will announce the capture of a predator, promising long-awaited justice. However, the foundation of this ultimate discovery rests on a profoundly corrupted source, ready to collapse and shatter the illusion of closure. The political atmosphere of the District of Columbia in the early months of 2001 hums with intense partisan energy and endless public scrutiny. The streets of the capital shine with monumental marble buildings, while the sprawling green spaces offer a deceptive sense of quiet sanctuary. Chandra Levy navigates this high-stakes environment as a vibrant, ambitious 24-year-old intern at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. She arrives in the city driven by a fierce desire to build a meaningful career in public service. Her days follow a rigorous, highly disciplined routine that balances demanding office hours with a strict commitment to physical fitness. Colleagues recognize her sharp intellect and unyielding dedication to her assigned federal projects. She frequently visits a local health club on Connecticut Avenue, maintaining an active lifestyle that keeps her grounded amidst the chaotic energy of the capital. Outside of her professional obligations, Chandra spends countless hours exploring the expansive trails of the city parks. She rents an apartment in the upscale neighborhood of DuPont Circle, a bustling area lined with mature trees, historic brick town homes, and endless pedestrian traffic. Her life appears incredibly promising, filled with the boundless optimism of a young woman standing on the threshold of a prestigious career. Frequent phone calls to her parents in California anchor her to her family roots, providing a steady stream of emotional support. To her friends and family, Chandra represents the ideal blend of youthful ambition and mature responsibility. Nothing in her daily habits suggests any erratic behavior or a desire to sever ties with her loved ones. The local police department, however, operates under a microscope of constant public evaluation regarding its effectiveness and transparency. This intense civic pressure creates a fragile environment where high-profile cases can easily derail into chaotic media spectacles. The city stands completely unaware that a devastating storm is about to tear through its political foundations. Rock Creek Park cuts a massive, rugged swath of wilderness directly through the heart of the District of Columbia. The park spans over 9,700 acres of dense woodlands, steep ravines, and twisting waterways that feel entirely isolated from the surrounding urban landscape. A winding network of paved paths and dirt trails weaves through the thick canopy of oak and hickory trees. For city residents, this vast green expanse serves as an essential refuge from the stifling heat and the concrete grid of the capital. The geography of the park presents a unique challenge, featuring isolated stretches where the ambient noise of city traffic completely vanishes behind the thick foliage. Deep shadows obscure the narrower dirt paths even during the brightest hours of the afternoon. Chandra frequently utilizes these trails to escape the overwhelming pressure of her federal internship. She knows the main jogging routes well, finding peace in the rhythmic crunch of gravel beneath her running shoes. However, the sheer size and isolation of the park create severe blind spots for local law enforcement patrols. Call boxes and security measures remain sparse along the deeper interior trails, leaving visitors vulnerable to unseen dangers lurking just beyond the tree line. The sprawling topography means a person can vanish from sight within seconds simply by stepping off a paved path. Authorities struggle to maintain a consistent presence in these dense areas, often relying on sporadic mounted patrols or park police cruisers. This geographical isolation forms a perfect silent hunting ground for individuals harboring malicious intent. The juxtaposition of a bustling political metropolis bordering a dark, untamed forest creates an unsettling paradox for anyone venturing into the woods alone. For a young woman establishing her independence, the park represents freedom, yet it harbors a quiet menace that local authorities continually underestimate. The quiet routine of Chandra Levy fractures irreparably on the afternoon of May 1, 2001. She spends time on her computer inside her DuPont Circle apartment, leaving behind a digital trail of her final known moments. With resolute finality, she permanently cancels her local gym membership without offering any explanation to the facility staff. Her internet browsing history shows her seeking map information about the trails in Rock Creek Park, suggesting a clear plan for an afternoon outdoor excursion. Moments later, she steps out the heavy wooden door of her apartment and vanishes completely into the dense fabric of the city. The physical reality she leaves behind inside her home immediately raises alarming red flags for anyone paying attention. Her wallet, containing her federal identification cards and credit cards, remains sitting untouched on a kitchen counter. She leaves her keys and other essential daily items behind, a choice completely inconsistent with someone planning an extended trip or a voluntary departure. The heavy deadbolt clicks shut behind her, sealing her apartment in a state of suspended animation. Hours turn into days, and the silence from Chandra grows deafening to her parents across the country in California. When she fails to return her family phone calls, a chilling sense of dread settles over her loved ones. The absence of any financial activity on her bank account cements the reality that she did not simply walk away to start a new life. Her meticulously organized routine stops entirely on that Tuesday afternoon, leaving behind a void that defies logical explanation. The realization that a federal intern can evaporate from a heavily surveilled neighborhood terrifies the local community. A massive search effort eventually launches, but the initial response suffers from devastating delays and jurisdictional friction. Local law enforcement initially treats the disappearance as a standard missing persons case, failing to secure the apartment as a potential crime scene. Crucial days evaporate while different branches of the local police and federal agencies struggle to establish a unified chain of command. Miscommunications plague the early stages of the investigation, resulting in disjointed searches and verified tips dominating the narrative. The immense political pressure forces investigators to prioritize media relations over meticulous ground-level detective work, creating a blinding tunnel vision. Search dogs and mounted units scour the paved areas of Rock Creek Park but fail to penetrate the deepest, most treacherous ravines. The changing seasons bury any subtle clues under heavy layers of autumn leaves and winter snow, effectively erasing the physical trail. It takes an agonizing 12 months before the grim reality of the situation finally breaks through the stalled investigation. In May 2002, a man walking his dog through a steep, heavily wooded incline in Rock Creek Park makes a chilling discovery. Hidden deep within the vegetation far from the main trails, authorities recover the fragmented remnants of Chandra Levy. The geographical distance between the busy path and her final resting place highlights a terrifying struggle in the isolated wilderness. The retrieval of these items forces a catastrophic shift in the perspective of the entire police department. The authorities must immediately reclassify the prolonged missing persons inquiry as a high-stakes investigation of a fatal, malicious act. The revelation ignites widespread outrage, proving that the frantic initial searches completely failed a vulnerable young woman. The discovery sets the stage for a relentless, decade-long legal battle built on desperation and deeply flawed evidence. In the immediate aftermath of the initial disappearance, investigators plunge into a massive public dead end. Detectives discover a hidden relationship between the missing intern and United States Congressman Gary Condit. This political revelation derails the entire investigative strategy. Shifting police focus away from the dense terrain of Rock Creek Park, media satellite trucks surround police headquarters, demanding daily updates on the actions of the sitting politician. Investigators redirect their resources toward searching the high-rise apartments and local waste management facilities connected to the congressman. Dive teams plunge into the dark waters of the Potomac River, scouring the riverbed for clues that do not exist. Detectives interrogate political aides and confiscate computer hard drives from legislative offices. The department channels thousands of labor hours into dissecting the personal life of a powerful public figure. Meanwhile, the actual physical evidence out in the wilderness deteriorates under the harsh seasonal elements. The obsessive focus on the congressman creates a blinding tunnel vision for the primary detective squad. A tip regarding another woman experiencing an attack in Rock Creek Park lands on a detective's desk but receives zero follow-up. The local police department operates under the rigid assumption that a political scandal holds the key to the mystery. This catastrophic misallocation of resources allows the true perpetrator to remain invisible. By the time authorities clear the congressman of any involvement, the initial investigative window stands shut. Following the recovery of the remnants in the spring of 2002, the case hits a solid, impenetrable wall of forensic silence. Crime scene technicians transport the fragile items to the central laboratory for extensive processing. Exposure to a full year of seasonal shifts obliterates any trace of foreign genetic material. The fabric of her discarded clothing yields zero microscopic fibers connecting back to an attacker. Analysts comb through the items searching for cellular profiles, but the harsh environment erased all chemical signatures. Detectives stare at blank laboratory reports, lacking the physical anchors required to build a courtroom narrative. During the subsequent 24 months, a new cold case unit inherits the massive investigative file. Veteran investigators haul dozens of cardboard storage boxes into a cramped basement office to restart the process from scratch. They spend their days cataloging thousands of ignored tip sheets and rereading the early field interviews line by line. Analysts input the old data into modernized criminal tracking software, searching for overlapping patterns. Detectives conduct fresh interviews with former park rangers and regular joggers who frequented the trails during the year 2001. The task force retraces the exact walking paths through the woods, mapping out blind spots and emergency call box locations. They cross-reference the timing of other local incidents against the established timeline of the missing intern. This grueling, systematic review of old paperwork requires unwavering discipline from the new squad of detectives. The tedious labor uncovers a crucial, forgotten thread hidden deep within the mountain of police reports. The cold case detectives focus their attention on the specific geography of Rock Creek Park during the exact month of the disappearance. They map out the Broad Branch Road access point, a steep, twisting incline lined with heavy timber, just a few hundred yards south of the area where searchers recovered the remnants. The park trails become obscured from the main roadway. Detectives discover incident reports detailing two separate, terrifying encounters occurring in this exact isolated sector. In the middle of May 2001, an individual ambushed two different women jogging along these dark, shadowed paths. The attacker utilized the natural terrain to conceal his approach, striking his targets on sections of the trail lacking direct sunlight. Investigators pull the arrest records and lock their sights on a local man named Ingmar Godijk. Law enforcement officers had already apprehended him for these specific trail assaults, securing a 10-year prison sentence. He currently resides in a federal penitentiary far removed from the leafy trails of the capital. Detectives recognize the profound geographical overlap between his past hunting grounds and the final resting place of the young intern. The physical proximity of these distinct events forms a chilling, undeniable pattern of predatory behavior. Investigators chart the distances on a massive wall map, drawing a tight circle around the eastern ridge of the park. The realization sets in that a known predator stalked the same narrow dirt pathways during the exact same time frame. The challenge now shifts from identifying a suspect to finding concrete evidence that connects an incarcerated man to an unsolved tragedy. Lacking any physical genetic evidence from the outdoor crime scene, the legal strategy pivots toward gathering human intelligence. Federal investigators travel to the high-security prison facility located in California to probe the social circle of Ingmar Godijk. They comb through visitor logs and interview fellow inmates, hoping to find someone willing to share information. The search leads detectives straight to an inmate named Armando Morales, a former gang member sharing a cell block with the suspect. Morales contacts law enforcement officials, claiming he holds explosive details about the unsolved Washington case. He sits in a stark concrete interview room and weaves a highly specific narrative for the recording devices. The informant states that Godijk admitted his involvement in the high-profile park attack during late-night cell conversations. According to Morales, the suspect described targeting a solitary female jogger and dragging her off the main gravel path into the heavy brush. This testimony introduces a monumental legal challenge for the investigative team and the district attorneys. Using a compromised jailhouse informant with a lengthy criminal record carries immense risk in a courtroom environment. The rigid protocols of criminal prosecution demand absolute transparency regarding any deals offered in exchange for such testimony. Detectives cross-check the claims made by the informant against the unreleased details of the physical recovery site. Morales includes specific environmental descriptions in his statement that align with the hidden geography of the ravine. The prosecution team makes the controversial decision to build their entire legal foundation upon the word of this career criminal. The district attorneys draft formal charges, confident that the combination of geographical proximity and the informant testimony will secure a conviction. Defense attorneys launch a ferocious counterattack against the structural integrity of the impending trial. They highlight the total absence of microscopic transfer, footprint impressions, or cellular profiles linking their client to the federal intern. The legal defense argues that the local police department suffers from a desperate, overwhelming need to close an embarrassing cold case. They point to the prior disastrous fixation on the congressman as proof of systematic incompetence within the investigative ranks. The defense files motions demanding a rigorous examination of the primary witness, Armando Morales. Attorneys uncover glaring inconsistencies in his timeline and question his ultimate motivations for cooperating with federal agents. The legal team emphasizes that a former gang member possesses every incentive to fabricate a confession in exchange for a reduced sentence or better prison conditions. Despite these aggressive legal challenges, the presiding judge allows the case to proceed toward a jury selection phase. Prosecutors orchestrate a narrative that portrays the defendant as an opportunistic predator who exploited the natural isolation of the city park. They minimize the problematic background of their star witness, presenting him as a man seeking redemption through truth. The trial transforms the courtroom into a battleground over the strict definition of reasonable doubt. Jurors sit through weeks of agonizing testimony, weighing the physical void of forensic science against the chilling words of an informant. The entire Capitol watches in suspense as the legal machinery grinds toward an anticipated verdict. In November 2010, a suffocating tension fills the heavy oak benches of a Washington courtroom. The jury panel returns to their assigned seats after agonizing days of closed-door deliberation. Court officers secure the wooden doors sealing the room from the frantic media circus waiting in the marble hallways. The foreperson stands upright and reads a verdict that shatters the oppressive silence of the chamber. The panel finds Ingmar Guandique guilty of the fatal attack on the young federal intern. Months later, the presiding judge pounds the gavel and hands down a staggering sentence of 60 years in a federal penitentiary. The heavy metal chains rattle as guards escort the convicted man out of the courtroom. This definitive verdict offers a profound sense of closure to a city exhausted by a decade of relentless scandal. High-ranking law enforcement officials hold self-congratulatory press conferences on the courthouse steps. They praise the unwavering dedication of the cold case detectives who refuse to let the trail go cold. Prosecutors declare that their immense gamble on a jailhouse informant secured long overdue justice for the grieving parents. To the outside world, the meticulous pursuit of a predator hiding in Rock Creek Park ended in total victory. The political establishment breathes a collective sigh of relief, eager to wash away the embarrassing early failures of the initial search. The mayor and the police chief point to the conviction as a testament to the flawless execution of the justice system. However, the structural integrity of this celebrated legal triumph rests on a hollow, decaying foundation. The entire narrative is about to collapse under the weight of hidden truths and suppressed documents. Far removed from the flashing cameras and public celebrations, the defense attorneys refuse to surrender their fight. They launch a relentless appellate campaign targeting the singular pillar holding up the fragile conviction. The legal team focuses their intense scrutiny on the troubled background of Armando Morales. Defense investigators file complex legal motions to pry open sealed federal prison records across multiple states. They want to unearth the past life of the star witness and expose his true motivations for testifying. The appellate process grinds forward over the next several years, operating in the quiet shadows of federal archives. The defense zeroes in on the strict legal framework known as the Brady Doctrine. This crucial constitutional rule requires prosecutors to share all favorable evidence with the opposing legal team prior to a trial. The mandate ensures a fair fight and prevents the state from hiding exonerating details from the jury. During their meticulous review of the sprawling case files, the defense uncovers a massive cache of hidden documents. These critical papers never reached the hands of the defense team during the original 2010 legal proceedings. The files reveal that prosecutors and detectives concealed deep, systemic flaws regarding their primary source of human intelligence. The discovery exposes a terrifying reality about the lengths authorities went to secure a high-profile conviction. The desperate need to close the most embarrassing cold case in the Capitol LD officials to bury inconvenient truths. They locked the exculpatory evidence away in the prosecution archives, prioritizing a public victory over a fair trial. The suppressed documents strike the legal community like a sudden, devastating earthquake. Defense attorneys present secret internal memorandums and buried audio recordings to the appellate judges. These records demonstrate that Morales possessed a long documented history of providing information to authorities in exchange for prison leniency. While sitting on the witness stand in 2010, the informant had looked at the jury and denied ever seeking favors for his testimony. The hidden files prove that the star witness committed blatant perjury during the most critical moments of the trial. Furthermore, the records show that the prosecution team knew about his history of deceptive informant work long before he took the oath. The secret tapes reveal Morales manipulating the prison grievance system and coaching other inmates on how to leverage false statements against rivals. The revelation confirms the deepest fears of the defense attorneys and shatters the entire premise of the state case. The local police department and the district attorneys sacrificed the integrity of the judicial process to repair their damaged public image. The state built a towering legal structure on the words of a compromised career criminal. They compounded this error by hiding the rot from the presiding judge and the 12 citizens sitting in the jury box. The intense pressure to solve the political mystery resulted in the deliberate suppression of crucial evidence. This failure transformed the pursuit of truth into a carefully orchestrated deception. The appellate courts must now reckon with the horrifying fact that a monumental guilty verdict stems from prosecutorial misconduct. The foundation of the highest-profile conviction in Washington shatters into useless fragments. The sheer magnitude of the Brady violations leaves the appellate judges with no other choice but to intervene. The court throws out the original 2010 conviction and grants the defense a completely new trial. The prosecution team faces a catastrophic legal disaster as they attempt to salvage the shattered case from the ruins. They spend the first half of 2016 searching for new physical anchors or uncorrupted witnesses. The total absence of forensic material from the outdoor crime scene returns to haunt the district attorneys. Without the fabricated testimony of their discredited informant, the state holds zero evidence to present to a new jury. The prosecutors realize that putting Morales back on the stand would invite a devastating cross-examination and further humiliate the department. In July 2016, the United States Attorney makes a staggering public announcement to a stunned press corps. Prosecutors drop all charges against Ingmar Gwandik and decline to pursue any further legal action. The authorities cite unforeseen developments regarding their star witness that render securing a new conviction impossible. The massive legal machinery reverses course, dismantling the celebrated victory piece by piece. The public watches in absolute disbelief as the definitive answer to the decade-long saga evaporates into thin air. The grand press conferences of the past transform into quiet, brief statements conceding total defeat. The judicial system admits that the immense pressure to close the case blinded them to the deceit of their own witness. Following the sudden dismissal of the charges, the state removes Gwandik from the maximum security penitentiary. Federal marshals transfer him out of the criminal justice system and place him into the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He spends several months in a Stark detention center while officials process his final removal orders. In the spring of 2017, federal agents place him on an outbound flight and deport him to his native El Salvador. He leaves the borders of the United States without any legal ties to the tragic events in Rock Creek Park. Back in the District of Columbia, the case of the ambitious federal intern reverts to a cold, unsolved status. The passage of 15 years ensures that the harsh wilderness long ago consumed any remaining physical clues. The grieving parents in California find themselves thrust back into a permanent state of agonizing limbo. They must live with the haunting reality that the true narrative of that May afternoon remains hidden forever. The relentless tunnel vision of the original detectives destroyed the crucial early hours of the search. The subsequent desperation to secure a conviction poisoned the only available path to courtroom accountability. Law enforcement ignored the physical environment and relied on the deceptive words of a career criminal. The legacy of the young intern remains marred by catastrophic institutional blunders. The Rock Creek Park tragedy leaves a permanent stain on the local justice system, standing as a monument to the dangers of investigative desperation. The tragic reality of the Washington investigation demonstrates a terrifying flaw in the modern pursuit of justice. When a police department acts out of desperation to fix past mistakes, every new piece of evidence becomes susceptible to manipulation. The intense public pressure to erase an institutional embarrassment can blind seasoned detectives and corrupt the highest levels of the court. This dangerous dynamic creates a deep shadow where truth perishes and true predators walk away unseen. An environment built on self-preservation and political optics will prioritize a quick public closure over meticulous factual detective work. The consequences of such institutional desperation multiply to catastrophic levels when the stakes involve millions of dollars and shattered community trust. This exact volatile mixture of past scandals and new tragedies sets the stage for even darker legal battles across the country. Such a scenario played out with devastating results in a rural Midwestern salvage yard, testing the absolute limits of the American justice system. A man who survived 18 years of wrongful imprisonment stepped back into the free world, only to find himself at the center of another devastating mystery. Up in Manitou County, an impending civil rights trial proved that past police battles cast a permanent shadow of suspicion over every single new clue. The year is 2005, and Stephen Avery sits on the brink of an unprecedented legal triumph, armed with a $36 million civil rights lawsuit against Manitou County. He has just walked out of a concrete cell after enduring 18 years for a crime he did not commit, exposing deeply rooted corruption within the local sheriff's department. High-ranking officials face career-ending depositions, sweating under the glare of national media, just as the county government prepares for financial ruin. A young photographer vanishes without a trace after a routine visit to the Avery family property. The timing forces open a dark box of suspicion, setting the stage for a sprawling investigation where past grudges make every new piece of evidence look engineered. Manitou County, Wisconsin, stretches across the eastern edge of the state as a patchwork quilt of dairy farms, dense timberlands, and quiet rural highways. The chill of autumn settles deep into the soil here by late October, turning the vast fields into seas of brown and gold. Off State Highway 147, a long dirt driveway cuts through the quiet landscape. This gravel road leads directly into the Avery salvage yard. The property consumes 40 acres of remote land, bordered by thick woods and an active gravel pit. Rusting frames of thousands of discarded vehicles sit arranged in endless, jagged rows across the dirt. Piles of crushed metal cast long, jagged shadows under the fading afternoon sun. A perimeter ridge of crushed cars acts as a makeshift wall, isolating the junkyard from the prying eyes of the main highway. The Avery family operates their business from a cluster of modest trailers and corrugated steel garages situated near the entrance. Scrap metal processing provides their primary livelihood, keeping the family tethered to this isolated acreage for generations. The sheer scale of the labyrinthine yard makes it a world unto itself, disconnected from the manicured lawns of the neighboring towns. It is a harsh industrial environment defined by grease, bent steel, and silence here. The hum of the nearby highway fades into nothing, far removed from the grit of the salvage yard. Teresa Hollack represents the vibrant pulse of the surrounding community. She is a 25-year-old freelance photographer who operates her own small studio. She spends her days capturing the bright, fleeting moments of childhood milestones, family portraits, and local weddings. Her friends and family know her for an infectious, warm smile that puts even the most anxious clients at ease. Teresa maintains close ties with her parents and siblings, sharing a home with a roommate on a quiet country road near her family farm. Beyond her studio work, she contracts with a regional auto magazine to supplement her income. This side job requires her to navigate the sprawling county roads in her teal Toyota RAV4, meeting strangers to photograph vehicles for sale. She treats these mundane assignments with the same careful attention she gives her portrait clients. Her schedule demands constant travel, taking her down isolated dirt roads and into unfamiliar driveways week after week. Despite the inherent vulnerability of this routine, Teresa navigates her territory with confidence and a trusting spirit. She maps out her routes with precision, always carrying a planner filled with handwritten appointments. Her future stretches out before her, bright and full of promise. She coaches local youth volleyball and volunteers her time without hesitation. Her presence in the tight-knit community is a source of joy for everyone she encounters. The local law enforcement apparatus finds itself paralyzed by a severe public relations crisis during this exact time frame. Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputies operate under a dark cloud of public suspicion and internal panic. Stephen Avery's recent exoneration from a 1985 conviction exposed massive fractures within the justice system. DNA testing proved Avery spent 18 years behind bars for a brutal attack he had no part in committing. The public revelation of this colossal failure stripped the department of its authority and credibility. Avery responded by filing a massive civil rights lawsuit demanding $36 million in damages from the county. The litigation targets specific high-ranking officials who handled the original investigation. Depositions are actively underway, forcing veteran officers to answer uncomfortable questions under oath. The county faces the legitimate threat of complete financial ruin if the lawsuit succeeds. Insurance providers threaten to deny coverage for the settlement, meaning the payout could bankrupt local government operations. A suffocating tension fills the sheriff's department offices, where every phone call and subpoena brings another wave of anxiety. Law enforcement officers who spent their careers building public trust now face open hostility from the citizens they police. The impending trial promises to humiliate the department on a national stage. This unprecedented legal battle turns the Avery name into a toxic lightning rod within the county courthouse. The bright, crisp afternoon of October 31st, 2005 begins as a standard workday for Teresa Hallblack. She finishes her morning appointments and climbs into her teal Toyota RAV4 to complete a series of vehicle shoots. Her planner dictates a route that weaves through the rural stretches of Manitowoc County. Around 2:30 in the afternoon, her tires crunch onto the gravel of the Avery Salvage Yard driveway. She parks her vehicle near a small cluster of outbuildings at the front of the property. Her specific assignment involves photographing a maroon Plymouth Voyager minivan owned by Stephen Avery's sister. The minivan sits parked near a rusted trailer surrounded by the towering rows of salvaged cars. Teresa grabs her digital camera, stepping out into the brisk autumn air to document the vehicle. She circles the Plymouth, framing the shots and capturing the exterior details for the upcoming magazine issue. Her routine is efficient, honed by hundreds of similar stops at properties just like this one. She finishes the photographs, collects her payment, and hands over a promotional magazine. From this exact location on the dirt driveway, the timeline of her day abruptly shatters. Teresa Hallblack ceases all communication with the outside world. Her cell phone stops registering activity, and the vibrant young photographer vanishes from the face of the earth. 3 days of agonizing silence pass before the illusion of normalcy breaks for the Hallblack family. Teresa fails to show up for her scheduled meetings, an act completely out of character for the responsible business owner. On the afternoon of November 3rd, her parents and friends begin calling her cell phone, only to be met with an automated voicemail greeting. Panic sets in as her family contacts her roommate and discovers she has not returned to her home. Her mother de-aisles the authorities, officially reporting her daughter as a missing person. Law enforcement agencies in the surrounding jurisdictions initiate an immediate search protocol. Detectives secure Teresa's phone records, tracing the digital footprints of her final active hours. The data reveals a clear path leading straight toward the sprawling Avery Salvage Yard. A specialized task force forms, pulling resources from neighboring counties to organize search parties and canvass the rural highways. Volunteers print thousands of flyers, pasting Teresa's smiling face onto gas station windows and utility poles across the region. Helicopters take to the sky, scanning the vast patches of denso timber and open farmland. The ground search intensifies as hundreds of citizens comb through ditches and walk the perimeters of local properties. A sense of impending dread settles over the community as each passing hour yields no trace of the teal Toyota RAV4. The exhaustive search effort culminates on the morning of November 5th in a moment of chilling discovery. A pair of volunteer searchers secure permission to walk the expansive perimeter of the 40-acre Avery property. They navigate the treacherous terrain, moving past the steep ridges of the active gravel pit on the southern boundary. The sheer volume of rusted metal creates a chaotic maze of jagged edges and sharp drop-offs. Tucked away in a remote corner of the yard near the tree line, a distinct shape catches their attention. It is a vehicle partially concealed under a crude camouflage of branches, a rusted car hood and discarded plywood. The searchers approach the hidden pile with mounting apprehension, their boots crunching on the loose gravel. Peering through the debris, they spot the distinct teal paint and the RAV4 emblem on the rear door. A quick check of the license plate confirms their worst fears, matching the missing person broadcast. The volunteers retreat and immediately alert the authorities stationed at the command center. Dozens of police cruisers descend upon the dirt driveway, securing the borders of the massive junkyard. The discovery of the vehicle forces a dramatic halt to the civil depositions taking place in the courthouse. The entire focus of the missing person investigation locks directly onto Stephen Avery and the sprawling salvage yard. The hunt for Teresa Haldach transitions into a sprawling, controversial crime scene investigation. The discovery of the teal Toyota RAV4 on November 5 transforms the salvage yard into a sprawling crime scene. Law enforcement officials face a monumental conflict of interest due to the pending $36 million civil lawsuit against Manitowoc County. The district attorney hands control of the investigation to neighboring Calumet County to preserve the integrity of the search. Calumet Sheriff's deputies assume command, setting up mobile headquarters at the edge of the property. Barricades block the dirt driveway, and floodlights pierce the darkness of the autumn night. Despite the formal transfer of power, Manitowoc County personnel remain on the property to provide logistical support. This administrative decision creates a fatal flaw in the optics of the entire operation. Manitowoc deputies, the exact individuals named in the civil litigation, step past the yellow tape and enter the active search grid. Investigators face the daunting task of processing 40 acres of rugged terrain and 4,000 crushed vehicles. Scent tracking dogs navigate the labyrinth of rusted metal straining against their leashes. Heavy rain begins to fall, forcing technicians to cover the Toyota RAV4 with a tarp to protect the exterior surfaces. Police cruisers idle along the perimeter, their red and blue lights reflecting off the puddles in the gravel. The search transitions from a missing person rescue mission to a grim hunt for forensic clues. The presence of Manitou officers casts a long, dark shadow over every movement made within the junkyard. State Crime Lab technicians arrive on November 6 to secure the central piece of evidence. They load the locked Toyota RAV4 into an enclosed trailer to transport the vehicle to a specialized garage in Madison. Forensic specialists pry open the doors in a sterile, climate-controlled environment, hunting for biological material. Flashlights illuminate the pristine interior, revealing a disturbing collection of stains. Technicians swab a dark, crusty substance smeared near the ignition switch on the steering column. Additional crimson droplets mark the floorboards, the compact disc case on the passenger seat, and the rear cargo threshold. DNA analysts rush the samples through the laboratory for extraction and profiling. The profiles return a definitive match to Stephen Avery, shattering his claims of innocence. A secondary profile matching Teresa Haldach emerges from the cargo area, painting a horrifying picture of her final moments. The presence of Avery's biological material inside the victim's locked vehicle creates an impenetrable wall of circumstantial guilt. Detectives secure a search warrant for the main trailer and the detached red garage. The scope of the investigation zeroes in on the cluster of buildings at the front of the salvage yard. The evidence forms a tight chain linking the property owner to the missing photographer. The walls of the legal trap begin to close around the Avery family compound. On November 8, the focus of the ground search shifts toward a blackened patch of earth behind Avery's garage. Investigators examine an outdoor burn pit, an area piled high with steel tire belts, ash, and crusted debris. An officer sifting through the charred remnants spots a fragment of bone tangled within the rusted wires. Forensic anthropologists from the state crime lab descend upon the pit with sifters and small trowels. They excavate the site, unearthing teeth, bone fragments, and metal rivets from a pair of denim jeans. The condition of the remains indicates exposure to extreme sustained heat over an extended period. The calcified fragments match the biological profile of the young photographer, confirming she met a brutal, permanent end. Detectives realize the perpetrator utilized the isolated nature of the junkyard to destroy the physical evidence of the attack. The scent of burned rubber and ash lingers in the cold November air as technicians bag the grim discoveries. Sifting screens separate the bone fragments from the industrial waste of the salvage yard. The location of the burn pit sits a mere 20 feet from Stephen Avery's bedroom window. This proximity strengthens the prosecution's theory of his direct involvement in the disposal of the victim. The reality of the crime settles over the community, replacing hope with profound grief. The search of Stephen Avery's wood-paneled bedroom on that same day ignites a massive controversial debate in the history of Wisconsin jurisprudence. Manout County deputies enter the small room to conduct a detailed sweep for trace evidence. This entry marks the 7th time law enforcement personnel have searched this specific confined space. One deputy shakes a small wooden bookcase, pulling it away from the wall to inspect the backing. A black lanyard attached to a single Toyota key appears on the carpet, sitting next to a pair of slippers. Forensic testing confirms the key belongs to the missing Toyota RAV4 and carries trace amounts of Avery's DNA. The defense attorneys launch a relentless counterattack, highlighting the impossible nature of this late discovery. They point out that a Manitowoc deputy, a man subjected to a deposition in Avery's civil rights lawsuit, found the key. The defense team accuses the department of staging the scene to manufacture absolute guilt. They argue the deputies possess the motive, the opportunity, and the access to frame their client. The sudden appearance of the key transforms the courtroom narrative from a standard criminal trial into a complex conspiracy thriller. Every subsequent piece of evidence found by local deputies falls under the lens of extreme suspicion. The legal battle lines form, pitting the integrity of the state against a man who lost 18 years to systemic failures. The defense attorneys expand their search for procedural anomalies by visiting the Manitowoc County Clerk's office in December 2005. They request access to the preserved evidence boxes from Stephen Avery's overturned 1985 conviction. Inside a dusty cardboard box, they discover an unsealed styrofoam container holding a purple-topped vial of Avery's preserved biological sample. The red evidence tape securing the container features a distinct slice down the center. The legal team pulls the glass vial from the foam and observes a small puncture hole piercing the rubber stopper. This discovery provides the foundation for an explosive defense theory involving planted biological material. The attorneys assert that desperate Manitowoc deputies accessed this insecure archive and extracted the liquid material with a syringe. The defense narrative suggests the officers transported this stolen fluid to the salvage yard and painted it onto the dashboard of the Toyota RAV4. This theory provides a logical, terrifying explanation for the presence of Avery's DNA inside the victim's locked car. The motive centers on halting the pending $36 million settlement that threatened to bankrupt the local government. The puncture hole in the stopper becomes a symbol of police corruption in the eyes of the public. The investigation morphs into a dual-track mystery, forcing the jury to question the origin of every forensic swab. The shadow of the previous wrongful conviction gives this elaborate framing theory an undeniable weight. The investigation takes a darker turn in late February 2006 when detectives target Avery's 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey. The teenager possesses a low intelligence quotient and exhibits extreme vulnerability to authority figures. Investigators pull the boy from his high school classroom and place him in a small, windowless interrogation room. No parent, guardian, or legal counsel sits beside the teenager to protect his constitutional rights. Two veteran detectives subject the boy to hours of psychological pressure and suggestive questioning. They employ controversial interrogation techniques, feeding specific case details to the teenager and demanding agreement. The officers promise the boy freedom and safety in exchange for his cooperation in their narrative. Under the crushing weight of the interrogation, Dassey weaves a horrifying contradictory tale of his involvement in the attack. He describes acts of restraint and violence occurring inside his uncle's bedroom, painting a scene devoid of physical forensic proof. The detectives guide his statements, correcting his timelines and suggesting weapons until the story fits the prosecution's theory. This tragic failure of the justice system exploits a vulnerable mind to secure a coerced confession. The state uses the teenager's fabricated statements to build an airtight case against the primary target. The narrative shifts from a solitary act of violence to a collaborative nightmare involving family members. Armed with the details extracted from the teenage nephew, investigators secure a new search warrant for the property in early March 2006. A massive team of forensic technicians descends upon the detached red garage next to Avery's trailer. The searchers move heavy equipment, roll away toolboxes, and sweep the dusty concrete floor. A technician operates a jackhammer, breaking apart sections of the foundation in a hunt for hidden biological material. Beneath an air compressor, an officer spots a flattened lead bullet resting in a crack in the cement. The projectile carries a microscopic trace of biological material. State crime laboratory analysts extract a partial DNA profile from the lead fragment and match it to Teresa Haldach. This discovery corroborates the narrative constructed during the interrogation of the teenage nephew. The defense attorneys point out the pristine nature of the bullet, questioning its presence in a garage that the prosecution claims the suspects washed with chemical cleaners. They note that investigators searched this exact garage multiple times in November without spotting the projectile. The discovery creates the final link in the chain of evidence required for the prosecution to proceed to trial. The state prepares to present a mountain of physical proof to a jury of local citizens. The impending courtroom battle promises to dissect the boundaries between brilliant detective work and absolute systemic corruption. The trial of Stephen Avery begins in February 2007 inside the Calumet County Courthouse. The courtroom features high wooden ceilings and rows of polished oak benches. Sunlight filters through tall, narrow windows, casting rigid shadows across the jury box. Stephen Avery sits at the defense table. He wears a tailored suit, projecting an air of absolute confidence. His high-priced defense attorneys launch their strategy with relentless aggression. They point the finger directly at Manitou County law enforcement. The defense presents the unsealed styrofoam evidence box to the jury. They display the glass vial of preserved fluid with the pierced rubber stopper. The attorneys walk through the multiple failed searches of Avery's bedroom. They highlight the impossible discovery of the Toyota key by a deposed deputy. The strategy forces the jury to view every physical artifact through a lens of deep suspicion. The specter of the 1985 wrongful conviction hangs heavy over the proceedings. The defense argues that desperate men take desperate measures to protect their pensions. The narrative demands the jury believe in a massive coordinated deception. The prosecution strikes back with devastating scientific precision. The state calls an expert witness from the Federal Bureau of Investigation to the stand. This chemist introduces the results of a specialized forensic procedure designed to detect laboratory preservatives. The chemical compound acts as a stabilizing agent inside purple, topped evidence vials. The federal expert testifies that the fluid found inside the teal Toyota vehicle contains no trace of this specific chemical preservative. This testimony strikes a fatal blow to the defense's central framing theory. The prosecution argues the liquid in the car came directly from an active, untreated cut on Stephen Avery's hand. The state maps out the sheer logistical impossibility of the conspiracy. To frame Stephen Avery, multiple rival police departments would need to collaborate in perfect silence. Officers would have to secure a vehicle, extract biological fluid, plant burned remains, and manipulate a teenager without leaving a single paper trail. The prosecution characterizes Stephen Avery as an arrogant predator who believed his impending legal wealth made him untouchable. He assumed the county would never dare accuse him of another crime. His confidence crumbles as the forensic reality sets in. The staccato rhythm of the state's closing arguments echoes through the silent courtroom. The jury retreats to the deliberation room to weigh the mountain of circumstantial evidence. They face a monumental choice between systemic corruption and individual guilt. The tension inside the courthouse corridors reaches a boiling point. Reporters line the hallways, broadcasting every minor update to a captivated national audience. The Hubbledatch family sits in agonizing wait, hoping the legal system will secure justice for Teresa Day's drag into a grueling marathon of legal debates behind closed wooden doors. Finally, on March 18, 2007, the jurors return to their seats. The court clerk reads the final verdict aloud. The jury finds Stephen Avery guilty of the fatal attack on the young photographer. The panel rejects the elaborate framing defense, deciding the physical evidence carries too much weight. The verdict validates the forensic work of the State Crime Laboratory. The elaborate conspiracy theory shatters against the concrete reality of the burn pit and the locked vehicle. Stephen Avery stares forward, his face locked in a rigid, emotionless mask. The courtroom erupts in a mix of profound relief and lingering shock. The $36 million lawsuit vanishes into the air, nullified by the criminal conviction. The final act of the legal drama unfolds during the formal sentencing hearing in June 2007. The presiding judge addresses the gravity of the crime and the absolute destruction of a promising young life. The court sentences Stephen Avery to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He leaves the courtroom in heavy steel shackles, returning to the concrete confines he once fought so hard to escape. Months later, a separate jury decides the fate of his vulnerable teenage nephew, Brendan Dassey. The boy faces the full weight of the justice system alone, bound by the tragic consequences of his coerced statements. Defense attorneys highlight the gross procedural failures that allowed veteran detectives to mentally manipulate a learning, disabled minor, despite the glaring lack of physical evidence linking the teenager to the crime scene. The jury accepts the recorded interrogation as absolute truth. The court sentences Brendan Dassey to life in prison, granting him a single sliver of hope with parole eligibility in the year 2048. This outcome exposes a terrifying flaw in the legal framework surrounding juvenile interrogations. The rigid protocols of the system fail to protect a susceptible mind from the crushing pressure of authority. Two members of the Avery family find themselves locked away, leaving behind a sprawling, silent salvage yard. The conclusion of the trials brings little peace to the grieving community of Manitowoc County. Almost a decade later, an international documentary series thrusts the entire investigation back into the global spotlight. The intense media scrutiny creates a massive wave of armchair detectives, analyzing every frame of the recorded interrogations. Millions of viewers dissect the pierced fluid vial, the mysterious car key, and the flattened lead bullet. The viral nature of the series strips away the privacy of the Hubbledatch family, forcing them to relive their darkest chapter on a continuous loop. Strangers from across the world send letters to the local courthouse, demanding a complete overhaul of the judicial findings. Stephen Avery secures a high-profile post-conviction legal team dedicated to overturning the verdict. These attorneys file endless motions citing procedural violations, suppressed evidence, and alternative suspects. They conduct independent forensic experiments, attempting to recreate the timeline to prove the physical impossibility of the state's narrative. Despite these relentless efforts, the appellate courts uphold the original convictions, citing the overwhelming volume of physical proof. The judicial system rejects the idea that an elaborate framing operation took place. The sprawling Avery salvage yard remains a haunting monument to a case that fractured the public trust in law enforcement. The legacy of the Stephen Avery investigation serves as a permanent warning about the intersection of civil litigation and criminal justice. When a police department possesses a history of profound mistakes, every new clue carries the stain of suspicion. The shadow of the 1985 wrongful conviction ensured that this tragic loss of life would never receive a simple, undisputed resolution. Teresa Hollett remains the true center of this narrative, a vibrant young woman whose bright future was stolen by a predator hiding in plain sight. Her memory endures through the loved ones who refuse to let her legacy be overshadowed by endless legal controversies. The justice system ultimately held her attacker accountable, even as the public debated the purity of the process. A broken trust between citizens and sworn protectors can transform standard police procedure into a labyrinth of doubt. But Manukau County is not the only jurisdiction where the tangled relationships of local police turn a tragic death into a conspiratorial nightmare. Sometimes the blue wall of silence creates a localized war zone right in the front yards of the very officers sworn to protect the public. We travel next to the freezing snowbanks of Massachusetts. There, a broken taillight and a shattered cocktail glass ignite an explosive battle over alleged police cover-ups. In the early hours of a freezing January morning in 2022, a massive blizzard buries Canton, Massachusetts, under layers of ice and heavy powder. Beneath the biting winds, the frozen, unresponsive body of Boston police officer John O'Keefe lies on the front lawn of a fellow officer's suburban home. His girlfriend, Karen Redd, faces immediate accusations of backing her heavy vehicle into him during a bitter dispute. But the tight-knit ranks of the local law enforcement community hold deep, pre-existing loyalties, turning every collected clue into a contaminated puzzle. John O'Keefe represented the very best of the Boston Police Department. He spent 16 years working his way up through the ranks, building a reputation as a steady, reliable investigator who treated his badge with deep reverence. Beyond his professional dedication, his true character revealed itself in the quiet walls of his home. Following an unimaginable double tragedy that claimed the lives of his sister and brother-in-law, John stepped up without a second thought. He opened his doors to his orphaned niece and nephew, transforming from a career bachelor into a dedicated father figure overnight. His daily routine shifted from late-night stakeouts to managing school drop-offs and packing lunches. He carried this heavy responsibility with immense grace, creating a stable, loving environment for two children who had lost everything. Alongside him stood Karen Redd, an accomplished equity analyst and adjunct professor at a respected regional college. The two had been dating for over 2 years, navigating the complex blending of their demanding careers and his sudden parental duties. On the surface, they presented a picture of modern resilience, leaning on each other through the unpredictable tides of daily life. Their partnership offered John a sense of romantic normalcy amidst the profound grief shadowing his family. They spent weekends managing the children's sports schedules and squeezing in rare moments of quiet connection. Neither could foresee how their hard-won stability would soon collapse into an unfathomable nightmare. The backdrop for this impending tragedy was the town of Canton, Massachusetts. Situated just a short drive south of Boston, Canton presents the quintessential image of quiet New England suburbia, characterized by winding roads, manicured lawns, and centuries-old colonial architecture. Beneath this picturesque exterior, the town functions as an insular haven for law enforcement families. Dozens of local, state, and city officers choose this municipality as their home base, seeking the safety of a community populated by their own peers. Neighborhood block parties and local tavern gatherings frequently resemble informal police union meetings. This environment creates a powerful unseen network where personal friendships and professional jurisdictions overlap in complicated ways. Officers from different agencies coach the same Little League teams, share beers on the weekends, and intermarry into the same deep-rooted families. A distinct culture of protection naturally forms in such towns, creating an invisible shield around its residents. When trouble arises, the initial instinct among these neighbors leans toward handling matters internally, relying on established trust rather than formal protocols. While this bond offers immense support to those inside the circle, it also constructs a formidable wall against external scrutiny. For anyone standing on the outside, penetrating this fortress of badges and bloodlines proves nearly impossible. This tight community dynamic set a complex, heavily burdened stage for the events that would soon tear the town apart. The evening of January 28, 2022, began as an ordinary Friday night out for John and Karen. A bitter winter chill gripped the region, signaling the approach of a historic nor'easter storm expected to dump feet of snow across the state. Seeking refuge from the dropping temperatures, the couple headed out to a local establishment named McCarthy's, right in the heart of Canton. They shared drinks, laughed with familiar faces, and later moved down the street to the Waterfall Bar and Grill to continue their evening. The atmosphere inside the warm tavern felt lively, packed with other off-duty officers and local residents bracing for the impending blizzard. As midnight approached, the couple received an invitation to a late-night gathering at a residence on Fairview Road. The property belonged to another veteran Boston police officer, cementing the guest list as an exclusive circle of badge, holding friends and family. The route to Fairview Road took them away from the illuminated commercial center and deep into the dark, tree-lined residential neighborhoods. The chosen house sat on a sprawling wide lot, positioned well back from the quiet street and flanked by a large front lawn. Heavy snow began to fall, steadily swirling in the beams of the streetlights and coating the asphalt in a slick white glaze. Karen steered her large black sport utility vehicle down the desolate road, pulling up to the edge of the property line. She dropped John off at the curb, watching him walk toward the residence before she drove away into the worsening storm. The early morning hours brought blinding horizontal snowfall that buried the town in profound silence. Back at her home, Karen woke up in the dark, her mind racing as she realized John had never returned to their bed. She checked her phone repeatedly, finding no messages or missed calls from him. A deep, unsettling panic began to take root in her chest as the hours dragged on without any sign of his return. She dialed his number over and over, listening to the hollow ringtone echo into the void. Unable to sit still, she contacted 2 other women from their social circle, asking them to help her retrace the steps of the previous night. The 3 women ventured out into the blinding whiteout conditions, their vehicle slipping and sliding on the unplowed, treacherous suburban roads. They navigated back toward the Fairview Road property, peering through the heavy veil of falling snow in a desperate search for any sign of him. The massive front lawn of the residence now sat under a thick, undisturbed blanket of white powder, stretching from the road to the dark house. As they approached the edge of the yard, the headlights washed over a dark, unnatural shape, contrasting against the pristine snow. They exited the vehicle, stepping into the biting cold to investigate the anomaly resting on the frozen grass. The women pushed their way through the deep snowbanks, their boots crunching against the ice as the horrific reality of the scene came into focus. John O'Keefe lay on his back in the freezing powder, his body completely unresponsive to their desperate pleas. He wore only a long-sleeved shirt and jeans, garments entirely inadequate for a storm of this magnitude. Deep visible trauma marked his face and head, hinting at a severe impact that shattered the quiet stillness of the night. Both of his eyes were swollen, shut, and deep lacerations covered his right arm, creating a chilling contrast against the pale winter landscape. The brutal temperatures had pushed his core body temperature down to a fatal level, inducing severe hypothermia as he lay exposed to the elements. First responders arrived on the scene shortly after, their flashing red and blue lights cutting through the whiteout conditions to illuminate the tragedy. Paramedics initiated life-saving measures immediately, battling the freezing wind as they loaded his stiffened frame into the back of an ambulance. They transported him to the nearest regional medical center, rushing him through the emergency doors in a frantic bid to reverse the profound physical damage. Despite the exhausted efforts of the trauma team, the extensive head injuries and the profound cold proved too much for his system to endure. John O'Keefe drew his final breath within those sterile hospital walls, leaving behind a devastated family and a mystery that would soon tear the entire town apart. The investigation into the tragic passing of John O'Keefe commenced before the winter storm subsided. Detectives from the local jurisdiction converged on the hospital and the snowy Fairview Road property to piece together the sequence of events. Their attention shifted toward Karen Reed and her large black vehicle with absolute focus. Law enforcement officials observed a shattered taillight on the rear passenger side of her sport utility vehicle. Officers at the scene documented statements from first responders detailing expressions of profound guilt from Reed during the chaotic discovery of the body. According to these initial reports, she voiced questions about striking him with her vehicle in the blinding snow. Investigators matched scattered pieces of red and clear plastic found embedded in the snowbank to the broken casing on her vehicle. The resulting police narrative painted a picture of a heated dispute fueled by alcohol inside the cabin of the heavy truck. The official theory stated Reed executed a rapid three-point turn in the darkness, clipping O'Keefe as he stood on the residential street. The impact threw his body onto the freezing lawn, leaving him incapacitated as the storm buried him. Detectives secured a warrant for her arrest, charging her with serious vehicular infractions and setting the stage for a massive legal battle. This swift conclusion brought a temporary sense of order to the grieving department, closing the initial inquiry within days. The foundational evidence supporting this arrest rested on an unstable, contaminated foundation. The collection of physical evidence at the Fairview Road property demonstrated a staggering departure from standard forensic protocols. The Canton Police Department recognized a glaring conflict of interest due to the homeowner standing as a Boston police officer. The local chief recused his agency, transferring control of the scene to the Massachusetts State Police. The transition process created a vacuum of authority during the critical hours of evidence preservation. The winter storm continued to batter the region, burying potential clues under feet of fresh powder, instead of erecting climate-controlled forensic tents to protect the scene. Investigators deployed a leaf blower to clear the snow. This blast of high-velocity air disturbed the precise location of the plastic taillight fragments and other vital physical markers. Law enforcement personnel needed containers to collect the crimson-stained snow from the lawn. An officer walked to a neighboring house and returned with a stack of red plastic drinking cups. Investigators scooped the delicate biological evidence into these unsecured cups, placing them into a standard paper grocery bag. The investigative team sealed the grocery bag and placed it in the trunk of a standard police cruiser. The lead detectives made a pivotal decision to limit their search to the exterior lawn. They bypassed standard procedure and obtained no warrant to examine the interior rooms of the Fairview Road residence. The very house where the late-night gathering took place remained untouched by forensic technicians. The legal defense team representing Karen Reed launched a fierce counter-narrative attacking the official sequence of events. They directed intense scrutiny toward the specific physical injuries covering the body of John O'Keefe. The autopsy reports detailed severe blunt force trauma concentrated on the back of his head, paired with deep parallel lacerations down his right arm. Medical experts retained by the defense argued these specific marks lacked the typical characteristics of a vehicle strike. A heavy vehicle impact to a standing pedestrian causes severe lower body fractures and deep bruising on the torso. The lower extremities of O'Keefe showed zero signs of bumper impact or crushed bones. The defense team proposed a terrifying alternative scenario centered on the interior of the Fairview Road home. They theorized O'Keefe walked through the front door of the residence and descended into the basement area. According to this narrative, a violent physical altercation erupted in the lower level between O'Keefe and other off-duty officers. The parallel scratches on his right arm resembled the defensive bite marks and claw tears of a large animal. The homeowner kept a large German Shepherd dog inside the residence during the night of the gathering. The defense argued the occupants dragged his unconscious body out the side door and deposited him onto the snow-covered lawn to freeze. This explosive theory framed the entire investigation as a coordinated effort to protect fellow members of the law enforcement fraternity. The battle over the truth expanded from the physical crime scene into the digital landscape of cellular, data, and surveillance video. Defense attorneys subpoenaed the digital health records from the mobile phone carried by O'Keefe on that fatal night. The internal pedometer application recorded a specific number of steps taken by O'Keefe during the exact window of time he arrived at the property. The data suggested he walked up the driveway and ascended a staircase, contradicting the theory of his absence from the interior. Investigators seized the mobile phone of a female relative of the homeowner, extracting her digital search history from the early morning hours. Forensic analysts found a deleted internet search asking for the specific time it takes a human being to pass away in the cold. The defense highlighted this search as a damning piece of circumstantial proof indicating prior knowledge of the body on the lawn. The prosecution contested the timestamp of this digital search, blaming software glitches for the timeline discrepancy. The investigative team sought surveillance footage from the local town library situated along the driving route of Karen Reed. The video cameras captured her vehicle driving back toward her home during the raging blizzard. A critical segment of the recording containing a full 2 minutes of footage vanished from the final police submission. The missing video presented yet another unexplainable gap in the chain of evidence, fueling suspicions of deliberate tampering. The integrity of the state police investigation shattered upon the revelation of internal communications from the lead detective. Michael Proctor served as the primary investigator assigned to uncover the truth behind the tragedy on Fairview Road. The defense team dug into the personal background of Proctor, uncovering deep, pre-existing social ties between his family and the homeowners. Photographic evidence showed members of the Proctor family socializing with the exact individuals present at the house gathering. Federal authorities executed an extensive extraction of the cellular data belonging to Detective Proctor. The extraction yielded dozens of text messages sent by Proctor to his friends, supervisors, and fellow troopers during the active investigation. These messages contained severe derogatory language targeting Karen Reed, focusing on her medical conditions and personal character. He assured his high school friends that the homeowner would face zero consequences or scrutiny from his department. In another exchange, he stated his intention to search the mobile phone of Reed for explicit photographs for his own amusement. The lead investigator referred to the defendant using vulgar slurs, exposing a profound lack of professional objectivity. These documented communications stripped away any illusion of an impartial search for justice. The blatant hostility in these messages provided the defense with irrefutable proof of investigative bias. The courtroom narrative shifted from a simple vehicular manslaughter case into a sprawling indictment of the entire investigative apparatus. The profound irregularities surrounding the local and state inquiries triggered an unprecedented intervention from the highest levels of the federal government. The United States Department of Justice initiated an independent, wide-ranging probe into the handling of the entire case. Federal prosecutors convened a grand jury in Boston to evaluate the conduct of the local law enforcement officers and state investigators. The Federal Bureau of Investigation deployed its own elite forensic experts to re-examine the physical evidence and the damaged sport utility vehicle. These federal crash reconstruction specialists conducted rigorous independent testing utilizing advanced physics models to simulate the alleged impact. Their independent findings challenged the basic physics of the state police theory, noting the damage to the vehicle failed to match the kinetic energy required to cause the fatal head trauma. This parallel federal investigation generated over 3,000 pages of raw data, witness interviews, and internal communications. Federal prosecutors took the extraordinary step of handing this massive cache of documents over to the defense team. The inclusion of federal authorities cast a long, dark shadow over the competence and honesty of the local police forces. This intervention validated the core argument of the defense, proving their claims of corruption possessed genuine merit. The citizens of Canton watched their trusted institutions fracture under the weight of federal scrutiny. The stage was set for a chaotic trial where the line between the investigators and the criminals blurred into obscurity. The Norfolk County Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts, features heavy oak doors and towering ceilings designed to project absolute authority. In the sweltering summer of 2024, this historic building transformed into the epicenter of a massive national spectacle. Hundreds of spectators and media personnel packed the wooden benches, creating a suffocating atmosphere inside the humid room. The prosecution opened their case by painting Karen Reed as a reckless, intoxicated driver who caused a devastating tragedy. They laid out the broken plastic fragments and the timeline of an erratic morning search as foundational proof of guilt. The defense dismantled this narrative by highlighting the staggering incompetence of the evidence collection. The jury watched as attorneys displayed the red plastic drinking cups and the brown grocery bags used to store vital biological clues. Every physical item presented by the state carried the taint of procedural violations and jurisdictional overlap. The rigid protocols meant to ensure justice had collapsed under the weight of informal police federalization. The courtroom audience witnessed a bizarre inversion of reality where the investigators themselves faced intense scrutiny. The trial mutated into a grueling autopsy of the Canton law enforcement community rather than a standard criminal proceeding. The tension inside the courtroom peaked when lead investigator Michael Proctor took the witness stand under oath. The physical space between the witness box and the defense table felt charged with undeniable hostility. Defense attorneys forced the veteran detective to read his own digital communications aloud into the public microphone. The harsh acoustics of the room amplified the vulgar slurs and derogatory insults he had typed during the active search for truth. His arrogant demeanor crumbled as the jury listened to explicit promises to shield the homeowners from departmental consequences. He admitted to sharing sensitive medical information and mocking the defendant with his high school friends and fellow troopers. These verified texts shattered the illusion of an impartial objective search for the facts. The mask of the noble, dedicated detective slipped away, revealing a biased official operating above the rules. Jurors scribbled frantic notes, their expressions reflecting shock at the profound lack of professional integrity. The defense used this momentum to emphasize the deep personal ties connecting Proctor to the exact individuals he was supposed to investigate. His testimony solidified the terrifying reality that the system designed to protect citizens could face weaponization against an outsider. Following the devastating cross-examination, the trial pivoted to a battle of conflicting scientific and medical expertise. The prosecution called upon state forensic technicians to validate the theory of a high-speed vehicle impact. These state officials insisted the kinetic energy of the heavy sport utility vehicle caused the fatal head trauma and resulting hypothermia. In stark contrast, the defense brought forward the independent crash reconstruction specialists utilized by the federal government. These elite engineers utilized advanced physics models to prove the damage on the vehicle lacked the force required for the specific physical trauma. Medical examiners took the stand to debate the origin of the parallel scratches running down the right arm of John O'Keefe. The defense maintained these distinct marks mirrored the defensive clawing of a large domestic canine, reinforcing the theory of a basement altercation. State pathologists dismissed the animal attack theory, attributing the scratches to jagged ice or the rough surface of the road. The jury found themselves trapped in a labyrinth of contradictory science and ruined evidence. The compromised behavior of the initial investigative team made discerning the definitive truth an absolute impossibility. The failure to secure the crime scene during the blizzard erased the true narrative from the historical record. The first trial concluded in July of 2024 after days of agonizing jury deliberations. The 12 men and women remained deadlocked, unable to reach a unanimous verdict on the primary charges. The presiding judge struck the gavel, declaring a formal mistrial and sending shockwaves through the divided town of Canton. The community fractured it into bitter factions, with neighbors turning against neighbors over their belief in the official police narrative. Karen Red returned to court for a massive retrial in June of 2025. The second jury navigated the same tainted evidence and conflicting expert testimonies over several grueling weeks. This new panel of peers returned a definitive verdict, acquitting Reed of both second-degree murder and vehicular manslaughter. They rejected the narrative of a deliberate violent strike, finding the state failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury did convict her on the lesser charge of operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol. The judge handed down a sentence of 1 year of probation, allowing her to walk out of the courthouse without serving prison time. The ripple effects of the trial reached beyond the walls of the Dedham courthouse. The Massachusetts State Police terminated the employment of Michael Proctor, citing his egregious conduct and severe violations of departmental policy. This termination served as a rare moment of institutional accountability following immense public pressure and federal scrutiny. Despite the criminal acquittal on the major charges, the tragedy offered no final peace for the grieving family of John O'Keefe. The battle shifted into the civil arena where Reed now faces multiple wrongful death and defamation lawsuits. The exact witnesses she accused of framing her launched legal actions to clear their names and seek financial restitution. The town of Canton remains trapped in a state of perpetual distrust, haunted by the shadow of the fallen officer and the shattered integrity of their local institutions. The reliance on tainted procedures and personal bias turned a search for answers into a permanent legal nightmare. This destructive pattern of investigative tunnel vision and compromised evidence echoes through the archives of American justice. Decades earlier, the discovery of a high school student resting in a Baltimore park launched a frantic homicide investigation that relied on the exact same brand of flawed police certainty. February 9, 1999. A maintenance worker pulls his vehicle to the shoulder of Franklintown Road. He steps into the dense bare winter brush of Leakin Park in Baltimore, Maryland, seeking a spot to relieve himself. Near a fallen tree, 70 feet from the asphalt, he notices a patch of disturbed earth and the dark shape of human hair protruding from the soil. The discovery of an 18-year-old high school student launches a high-pressure homicide investigation. Detectives narrow their focus onto her ex-boyfriend, anchoring their case to the shifting statements of a single teenage witness and a brand-new, misunderstood cellular tower technology. It will take 2 decades and a profound re-examination of the dusty case files to reveal hidden alternative suspects and severe investigative shortcuts that shattered a community. The late 1990s in Baltimore, Maryland, present a landscape defined by sharp contrasts. Violent crime rates dominate the city proper, pushing local law enforcement resources to the breaking point. Homicide detectives carry immense caseloads, facing intense public pressure to close investigations and secure convictions. Just beyond the city limits sits Baltimore County, a sprawling suburban ring characterized by quiet neighborhoods, manicured lawns, and wide asphalt roads. Woodlawn High School serves as the focal point for families living in this western sector of the county. The campus features sprawling brick buildings bordered by large athletic fields and paved parking lots. Students navigate a rigid schedule of classes, sports practices, and after-school jobs forming tight-knit social circles. Beneath the surface of this typical suburban environment, the cultural expectations of first-generation immigrant families clash with typical teenage American life. Teenagers maintain clandestine relationships, hiding their dating lives from conservative parents. Detectives accustomed to the blatant violence of the inner city rarely encounter complex domestic mysteries within these quiet suburban borders. The overarching demand for swift justice forces investigators to prioritize fast closures over meticulous, slow-paced inquiry. A climate of urgency permeates the precinct squad rooms. This creates an environment ripe for confirmation bias and tunnel vision. Detectives view the surrounding suburbs as a low-priority zone until violence breaches the county line. The intersection of these strained police resources and a hidden teenage world sets the stage for a catastrophic legal failure. Hae Min Lee stands out as a vibrant 18-year-old senior navigating the halls of Woodlawn High School. She participates in school life, playing on the varsity lacrosse and field hockey teams. Friends recognize her by her bright personality, constant laughter, and determined work ethic. Beyond her athletic commitments, she manages a strict daily routine built around familial responsibility. Every weekday afternoon, she leaves the high school campus, climbs into her 1998 Nissan Sentra, and drives down Woodlawn Drive. Her route takes her past residential blocks and strip malls toward a local elementary school. She bears the daily responsibility of picking up her younger cousin at 3:15 in the afternoon. After securing her cousin, she transports the child home before heading to a part-time job at a local LensCrafters store. She balances these demanding roles with dreams of attending college, documenting her hopes and frustrations in a private diary. Her vehicle serves as a sanctuary, a quiet space between the pressures of school, family expectations, and work. She exudes a sense of reliability, anchoring her family's daily logistical needs. Her friends and teachers view her as a mature young woman possessing a clear vision for her future. The community respects her dedication to her younger relatives. Peers view her as a foundational pillar within her family structure. Her ambitious nature leaves no room for impulsive decisions or unexplained absences. Within this same tight-knit high school environment, Adnan Syed moves through the corridors as a popular charismatic figure. He maintains a high-grade point average, securing a spot in the magnet program for gifted students. He plays on the defensive line for the varsity football team and runs track, earning recognition from peers and teachers alike. He and Hae Min Lee share a history, having dated for several months before breaking up in December of 1998. Their relationship involved shared secrets, clandestine phone calls, and intricate plans to avoid the scrutiny of their respective parents. Following the end of their romance, The two teenagers attempt to remain friends, navigating the awkward social dynamics of a shared friend group. Syed possesses a reputation as a typical, well-adjusted teenager. Immersed in his local mosque and community center, he works part-time as an emergency medical technician, projecting an image of civic responsibility. The student body perceives the breakup as a standard high school drama, devoid of glaring red flags or public volatility. Friends observe the two interacting in classrooms, exchanging notes, and participating in mutual social gatherings. To the outside observer, the teenagers represent the standard bustling life of American suburban youth. The underlying emotional complexities of their severed relationship remain hidden beneath the routines of homework and sports practices. The quiet halls of Woodlawn High School offer no indication of the impending tragedy. The delicate balance of this suburban ecosystem shatters on a cold winter afternoon. A routine afternoon drive veers off course, plunging the community into an endless nightmare. On January 13, 1999, the final bell rings at Woodlawn High School at 2:15 in the afternoon. Hae-Min Lee departs her final class and navigates the crowded hallways toward the exit. Friends spot her rushing toward the parking lot. Clutching a snack purchased from a school concession stand, she enters her gray Nissan Sentra, starts the engine, and pulls out of the school grounds onto the main thoroughfare. Her intended destination lies just a few miles away at the elementary school, where her young cousin waits by the front doors. The clock strikes 3:15, and the cousin remains standing on the sidewalk alone. The elementary school staff notice the delay, prompting a phone call to the Lee household. Panic sets in as family members realize the dependable, punctual teenager missed her daily obligation. Hae-Min Lee never arrives at the LensCrafters store for her scheduled evening shift. Relatives begin dialing the phone numbers of her friends, seeking any information regarding her whereabouts. By early evening, the family contacts the Baltimore County Police Department to file a formal missing persons report. An officer arrives at the Lee residence, taking down the license plate number of the Nissan Sentra and gathering a physical description of the teenager. The sudden departure from her rigid daily routine signals an immediate, chilling departure from her established character. The quiet Baltimore suburb transforms into a landscape of terrifying uncertainty as night falls over the empty streets. Her bedroom remains dark and untouched, a silent testament to an interrupted life. Detectives begin tracing the digital and physical footsteps left behind by the high school senior. Officers initiate phone calls to her closest friends, inquiring about potential runaway scenarios or secret trips. The local police dispatch issues a broadcast alert for the gray Nissan Sentra, instructing patrol vehicles to scan parking lots and side streets. Investigators pull the teenager's bank records, searching for recent withdrawals or credit card transactions. The financial statements show zero activity, deepening the concern among the investigating officers. Helicopters fly over the dense wooded areas surrounding Baltimore County, using searchlights to scan for the missing vehicle. Community members print thousands of flyers featuring a photograph of Hae-Min Lee. Volunteers tape the paper sheets to telephone poles, storefront windows, and community bulletin boards. Officers visit Woodlawn High School, pulling students out of classrooms to conduct preliminary interviews in empty administrative offices. The questioning focuses on her recent breakup, her new romantic interests, and any conflicts within her social circle. Days turn into a continuous cycle of dead ends, unanswered questions, and mounting dread for the family. The police deploy tracking dogs near the school grounds, but the canines fail to pick up a viable scent trail on the frozen asphalt. The investigation stretches across the remainder of January, yielding zero confirmed sightings and no trace of the missing automobile. The silence from the missing teenager stands in stark contrast to her habitual use of baggers and landline telephones. The absence of concrete evidence forces detectives to wait for a physical break in the case. On February 9, 1999, the trajectory of the investigation shifts from a frantic search to a grim reality. Leakin Park sits within the western city limits of Baltimore, an expansive tract of dense, unmanaged woodland bordered by winding two-lane roads. The park features heavy canopies of mature trees, thick underbrush, and steep ravines stretching across hundreds of acres. A municipal maintenance worker drives his truck along the curving asphalt of Franklin Town Road, a primary route cutting through the heart of the forest. He pulls his vehicle over to the shoulder, stepping over the guardrail and descending into the winter foliage to relieve himself. Roughly 70 feet from the pavement, surrounded by dead leaves and fallen branches, he stops walking. He notices an unnatural depression in the soil behind a large uprooted tree trunk. A closer inspection reveals human hair and a foot protruding from a shallow makeshift excavation. The worker retreats to the road, flags down a passing police cruiser, and directs the patrol officers into the brush. Crime scene technicians descend upon the forest. Gordoning off the perimeter with yellow tape, personnel set up portable generators to illuminate the dark woods. The medical examiner arrives at the site, securing the remains and transporting them to the downtown morgue for a full autopsy. The forensic evaluation reveals that the young woman met a brutal permanent end via manual strangulation. The missing persons inquiry terminates in the cold examination room. The Baltimore City Police Department assumes full jurisdiction, launching an investigation focused on capturing a hidden predator. In the days following the grim discovery in Leakin Park, the Baltimore City Police Department shifts its operational focus toward the inner circle of the victim. On February 12, 1999, a precinct telephone rings, delivering an anonymous tip that alters the trajectory of the investigation. A male voice on the other end of the line instructs detectives to look closely at the former boyfriend, Adnan's side. The caller provides no concrete evidence, but the suggestion aligns with standard investigative protocols prioritizing romantic partners in domestic tragedies. Investigators direct their attention toward the charismatic high school athlete. Detectives recognize that tracking a teenager through a sprawling suburban landscape requires modern technological surveillance. On February 16, law enforcement officials draft a formal subpoena demanding the cellular telephone records registered to the Syed family. In the late 1990s, mobile phones remain a novelty for high school students, serving as luxury items for brief communications. Detectives view the digital trail left by these devices as an infallible map of a suspect's daily movements. The telecommunications company complies with the legal request, transmitting a stack of printed call logs to the homicide unit via a facsimile machine. The investigators spread the paper sheets across their desks, searching for anomalies in the outgoing and incoming call patterns on the day the victim vanished. They identify a tight cluster of communications placed during the exact afternoon hours when the high school senior failed to retrieve her cousin. The printed cell phone logs reveal a persistent pattern of outgoing calls to a specific landline number on January 13. Detectives trace this recurring telephone number to a residence belonging to a young woman named Jennifer Puseri. Investigators dispatch officers to her home, bringing her into the precinct for a formal interview regarding her connection to the honor student. During the questioning, she denies speaking to Adnan's side on the day in question. Instead, she directs the investigators toward a local 19-year-old acquaintance named Jay Wilds. Jay operates on the fringes of the Woodlawn High School social circle, known locally for distributing marijuana and navigating the rougher edges of the suburban community. He admits to borrowing the vehicle and the newly purchased mobile phone belonging to Adnan on that cold January afternoon. This revelation places a known drug distributor at the exact center of the telecommunications web during the critical hours of the disappearance. Detectives perceive Jay as the crucial wedge needed to shatter the clean-cut alibi of their primary teenage suspect. On the evening of February 28, plainclothes officers locate Jay and transport him to an austere, windowless interrogation room in the downtown headquarters. The transition from a quiet suburban life to the harsh fluorescent glare of a homicide division initiates a profound psychological deterioration for the young man. The interrogators activate the cassette tape recorder, demanding a full accounting of his movements on the day the high school senior vanished. During this first recorded session, Jay Wilds delivers a harrowing narrative that places the ultimate blame on Adnan's side. He claims the high school athlete opened the trunk of a vehicle to reveal the lifeless body of his former girlfriend. Jay further states that he followed Adnan to Leakin Park under duress and actively assisted in exhumating the shallow earth near the fallen tree. However, the chronological timeline provided in this initial statement contains severe logical fractures and contradictory locations. Detectives noticed the stark inconsistencies between his spoken narrative and the physical routing of the cell phone calls. 2 weeks later, on March 15, investigators bring the young man back into the Stark interrogation room for a second intensive session. The detectives employ aggressive, coercive interviewing tactics, placing the printed cell tower logs on the metal table between them. They point to specific times and tower locations, challenging his previous statements and demanding compliance with the digital data. Under immense psychological pressure, Jay alters his geographical locations, the timing of the trunk reveal, and the sequence of his travels. His revised story morphs to match the locations of the cellular towers documented in the telecommunications paperwork. The defense will later argue that investigators fed him the tower data, molding a terrified teenager's memory to fit their desired prosecutorial narrative. The final taped confession weaves a complex tale of two teenagers driving frantically across Baltimore, guided solely by the rigid sequence of digital pings. The entire foundation of the impending trial rests on the presumed absolute accuracy of the cellular tower technology utilized by the telecommunications giant. In the year 1999, mobile networks operate by connecting a handset to the nearest available antenna with the strongest signal, not via satellite tracking. The state builds its geographical timeline around two specific incoming calls registered at 7 in the evening. Detectives assert these two pings place the mobile phone inside the boundaries of Leakin Park during the exact time of the burial. A massive, foundational error exists at the core of this technological certainty, hiding in plain sight within the original case file. The telecommunications company included a standard facsimile cover sheet when they transmitted the call logs to the homicide unit. This critical document contains a bolded warning from the network engineers regarding the limitations of their hardware. The text states that incoming calls will not be considered reliable information for location tracking. Detectives ignore this strict technical limitation, treating the incoming pings as infallible geographical coordinates. The lead prosecutors build elaborate trial presentation boards, mapping out a route that the technology itself states is scientifically invalid. This deliberate disregard for technical reality transforms a routine piece of corporate paperwork into an instrument of systemic injustice. The unquestioned reliance on these two incoming calls seals the fate of a high school student, while the actual perpetrator remains unchallenged. Armed with the molded testimony of Jay Wilds and the scientifically flawed cellular tower maps, the police execute an early morning raid. Officers arrest Adnan Said at his family home on February 28, abruptly ending his life as an ambitious, college-bound teenager. The state charges the 17-year-old with the ultimate crime, placing him inside a maximum security detention facility to await trial. The prosecutors construct a rigid 21-minute window of opportunity, arguing the teenager ended the victim's life in a busy retail parking lot. The defense team struggles to dismantle the complex technological arguments, failing to consult an independent cellular technology expert. The defense attorneys overlook the crucial fascicular cover sheet. missing the single sentence that could shatter the timeline presented by the state. The local media broadcasts the narrative of the jealous former boyfriend poisoning the jury pool and satisfying the public demand for a swift resolution. The courtroom proceedings stretch across the end of 1999 and into the early months of the year 2000. The prosecution relies on the emotional weight of Jay Wilds pointing a finger from the witness stand and the large, colorful maps of cellular antennas. The lack of any physical material linking the teenager to the crime scene is brushed aside by the overwhelming presentation of the digital call logs. The jury absorbs the unverified technological data as absolute truth, unaware of the corporate disclaimer buried deep within the defense files. A systemic failure takes root in the courtroom, replacing meticulous forensic science with compelling but fabricated geographical certainty. While the prosecution directs the jury's attention toward the cellular tower maps, a far more sinister reality remains hidden inside the police archives. Deep within the dusty precinct filing cabinets, investigators possessed handwritten notes detailing the existence of two distinct, highly dangerous alternative suspects. The first hidden suspect possesses a documented, violent criminal history involving unprovoked physical attacks against young women in isolated areas. This individual resides in a property located adjacent to the grassy lot where police recovered the gray Nissan Sentra. The second hidden suspect previously engaged in a severe verbal altercation with the victim, issuing a direct threat against her life just months prior to the disappearance. The lead prosecutors bury these explosive investigative notes, removing them from the official disclosure packets provided to the defense attorneys. The justice system mandates a strict legal obligation to share any exculpatory material that could aid an accused individual during a trial. This deliberate suppression constitutes a catastrophic violation of due process designed exclusively to protect the fragile timeline constructed around the cellular records. By hiding the existence of these violent predators, the state ensures the jury never hears about the hidden dangers lurking in the Baltimore suburbs. The concealment of this critical information creates a sanitized artificial reality within the courtroom walls. The blind pursuit of a rapid conviction blinds the authorities to the very real possibility that a seasoned predator orchestrated the tragedy in Leakin Park. The gavel falls on a compromised trial, locking away a teenager, while the actual circumstances of the brutal act remain buried under layers of official deceit. The sprawling bureaucratic machinery of the Maryland justice system grinds toward an unprecedented reckoning in September of the year 2022. The Mitchell Courthouse stands in downtown Baltimore, a towering fortress of pale marble and heavy mahogany doors. Deep inside the appellate division offices, a new generation of legal professionals sifts through the deteriorating cardboard boxes housing the 1999 case files. They uncover the catastrophic failures that condemned a teenager to a concrete cell for over 2 decades. The investigators locate the handwritten notes detailing the 2 dangerous alternative suspects. Realizing this critical information never reached the original defense team, they find the facsimile cover sheet from the telecommunications company, reading the explicit warning that incoming cellular signals could not provide accurate locations. The discovery of these suppressed documents shatters the foundational pillars of the state's original prosecution. The Baltimore City State's attorney initiates an aggressive legal intervention. The office files a comprehensive motion demanding the court vacate the conviction of Adnan Said. The legal paperwork outlines a staggering narrative of systemic misconduct, confirmation bias, and the deliberate withholding of exculpatory evidence. It exposes how the original detectives engineered a geographical timeline using scientifically invalid data. The prosecutors request an emergency hearing to correct the historical injustice perpetuated by their own department. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom swing open to address a failure decades in the making. On September 19, 2022, A dense crowd fills the gallery of the Baltimore Circuit courtroom. The judge takes the elevated wooden bench, peering down at the assembly of attorneys, in a stunning reversal of legal precedent. The lead prosecutor stands before the judge and dismantles the state's own historic victory. The state's attorney admits in open court that the original prosecution team violated their strict constitutional obligation to share the exculpatory evidence regarding the alternative suspects. The prosecutor points to the flawed cellular tower presentation, acknowledging that the unverified data compromised the fundamental integrity of the entire trial. The defense attorneys sit beside Adnan's side, watching the prosecution unravel the fabricated timeline built around Jay Wilds and the incoming mobile pings. The judge reviews the extensive documentation of investigative shortcuts and official deceit. She declares that the state failed to provide a fair and impartial trial. The sharp crack of the wooden gavel echoes against the marble walls, vacating the conviction. Law enforcement officers step forward and remove the heavy metal shackles from the wrists of the 41-year-old man. The courtroom erupts as a man imprisoned since his high school days takes his first unrestricted steps toward the exit. The blinding light of the media cameras captures the exit of an individual broken by the system, while the real perpetrator of the 1999 tragedy remains a ghost. The legal saga transitions into a dizzying labyrinth of procedural chaos following the triumphant courthouse exit. In October of the year 2022, prosecutors drop all charges, allowing Adnan's side to walk free after serving 23 years behind bars. The Lee family watches the sudden reversal from afar, enduring immense psychological torment as the definitive answers they relied upon evaporate into thin air. The family files an appeal, arguing the state violated their legal rights by failing to provide them with adequate notice to attend the pivotal vacation hearing. The rigid machinery of the appellate courts engages, prioritizing procedural technicalities over the substantive evidence of police misconduct. An appellate judge reviews the timeline of the contested hearing and rules in favor of the victim's family. The court reinstates the historic conviction on an administrative technicality, plunging the case back into a state of judicial limbo. The legal whiplash exposes a massive flaw in the post-conviction system, where a proven constitutional violation cannot overcome a rigid scheduling error. The freedom of the former high school athlete hangs in the balance as the attorneys prepare for a prolonged battle in the highest courts of Maryland. The undeniable proof of the suppressed suspects and the flawed cellular data remains trapped behind a wall of bureaucratic red tape. The pursuit of truth gives way to endless arguments over courtroom scheduling protocols. The labyrinthine journey reaches its bitter conclusion in the year 2024 and early 2025. The Maryland Supreme Court convenes in August of 2024, upholding the appellate decision to reinstate the conviction due to the procedural violations against the victim's family. Faced with an endless cycle of appeals, the prosecution team abandons their efforts to vacate the original judgment in early 2025. A circuit court judge steps in to end the active incarceration threat, sentencing the former honor student to time served. He remains free, living in the community on supervised probation. But the catastrophic conviction remains etched onto his criminal record. The failure of the 1999 homicide detectives leaves a permanent scar on the city of Baltimore. The tragic loss of Hae Min Lee remains a source of deep, unresolved pain for a family trapped in a broken judicial system. They possess no definitive answers, no true accountability, and no genuine justice for the bright young woman whose future was stolen on a cold January afternoon. The dangerous suspects hidden in the precinct files were never pursued, leaving a chilling void where the truth should reside. The nightmare of fabricated evidence and tunnel vision destroyed multiple lives in Maryland. But the terror of investigative bias stretches far beyond the East Coast. Just 1 year after the discovery in Leakin Park, Another tight-knit community 1,000 miles away would face a similar systemic betrayal. In the quiet suburbs of the Midwest, local police would arrive at a devastating scene inside a family garage, targeting one of their own while ignoring the real predator hiding in the shadows. On a crisp September evening in the year 2000, former Indiana State Trooper David Cam pulls his vehicle into the driveway of his quiet suburban home. He steps into the dark, cavernous space of his garage and makes a grim discovery that halts the breath in his lungs. His wife and 2 young children lie motionless on the cold concrete floor. He grabs his phone and dials the dispatcher, begging his former brothers in uniform for emergency aid. He believes he is calling for salvation. He has no idea he has just summoned the very architects of his own 13-year nightmare. Georgetown, Indiana, sits nestled in the rolling landscape of Floyd County, projecting an aura of undisturbed American tranquility. The street curve gently past large, well-kept houses with expansive lawns and wide driveways. Neighborhoods here echo with the deafening hum of cicadas in the late summer heat, and the glow of sodium streetlights provides a sense of absolute security. Residents know their neighbors by name and leave their front doors unlocked. Law enforcement officers choose this peaceful enclave to raise their families, creating a tight-knit community bound by shared professions and quiet routines. The local police department operates as an insular fraternity, demanding fierce loyalty from its members. Grievances and alliances within this department run deep, influencing the social fabric of the town behind the badge. Personal rivalries fester out of public view. To the outside observer, the authority figures of Floyd County represent a unified shield against the darker elements of society. Yet the internal politics of the precinct carry a weight that shapes every decision made on and off duty. When an officer leaves the fold, the complex web of past favors and simmering resentments remains intact. This unspoken dynamic forms an invisible perimeter around the community. It is a place where professional lines blur into personal lives. David Cam navigated this insular world for 10 years as a respected Indiana State Trooper. He wore the uniform with pride before stepping away from law enforcement to pursue a new career in private equipment sales. He shares a sprawling 2-story brick home on a quiet cul-de-sac with his wife, Kim, and their 2 young children. Kim is the foundation of the family, a devoted mother who balances a part-time job with the endless demands of raising children. 7-year-old Brad is a vibrant boy who loves sports and spends hours practicing in the driveway. 5-year-old Jill shadows her older brother, carrying a bright energy that fills the spacious house with constant warmth. The Cam family follows a comfortable, predictable routine centered around school events, community sports, and church gatherings. They host neighborhood barbecues and maintain close ties with David's former colleagues from the state police. Kim drives a standard family passenger vehicle and manages the household schedule with meticulous care. The children leave their bicycles leaning against the garage wall, a testament to the safety they feel in their own yard. David maintains his physical fitness by playing recreational basketball with local men at a nearby community church. To anyone driving past their manicured lawn, the family represents the peak of suburban stability. They are looking forward to a long future in the home they built together. The late afternoon sun casts long stretching shadows across the pavement on Thursday, September 28th, the year 2000. David Cam packs his gym bag and drives the short 3-mile distance from his home to the local community church for his regular basketball game. The church gymnasium features squeaky wooden floors and bright fluorescent overhead lights, serving as a gathering point for men from across the county. 11 other players join him on the court, engaging in a rigorous, unbroken game that lasts well past sunset. These 11 men track his every move, providing an airtight, continuous timeline of his physical location. At approximately 9:20 in the evening, the game concludes, and David climbs back into his vehicle. He navigates the winding suburban roads back to his neighborhood, expecting to find his family settling in for the night. His 2-story brick house sits dark against the night sky, save for a single exterior light illuminating the driveway. He pulls his car up to the detached garage and presses the remote button to raise the heavy metal door. The motorized track grinds upward, revealing the rear bumper of his wife's Ford Bronco parked inside the enclosed space. He steps out of his vehicle and walks into the shadows of the concrete structure. The heavy metallic click of his car door shutting echoes through the quiet street. Inside the dimly lit garage, the illusion of suburban safety shatters into fragments. David finds Kim, Brad, and Jill resting in unnatural positions near the family vehicle, their lives stolen by an unthinkable act of intrusion. He rushes forward, checking his wife and children for any lingering signs of breath, transferring the grim reality of the scene onto his own clothing in the process. Overwhelmed by shock, he pulls his phone from his pocket and dials the dispatch center, pleading for his former colleagues to send emergency medical teams. Within minutes, the wail of sirens shatters the quiet night, and a massive armada of police cruisers floods the narrow cul-de-sac. Uniformed officers and detectives swarm the property, stringing yellow tape across the manicured lawn and illuminating the garage with harsh, portable floodlights. The investigators gaze upon the devastation and lock their focus onto the grieving father standing in the driveway. They discard standard protocol, bypassing obvious foreign clues scattered across the concrete floor in favor of instant suspicion. Despite the sworn statements of 11 separate men who played basketball with David at the exact time of the tragedy, investigators refuse to widen their search parameters. The fraternity he once served turns a blind eye to logic, driven by deep-seated internal politics and blinding confirmation bias. Just 3 days after losing his entire world, former trooper David Cam is placed in steel handcuffs. The swift arrest stuns the Floyd County community and ignites a grueling, decade-long legal war built on manipulated science and shattered trust. The heavy iron doors of the Floyd County jail slide shut, locking David Cam inside a concrete cell measuring barely 8 feet by 10 feet. Outside these walls, his former law enforcement brothers immediately construct a case built entirely on a highly disputed forensic theory. The investigative team completely bypasses standard protocols for eliminating suspects and zeroes in on the clothing David wore on the night of the tragedy. Prosecutors seize upon 8 microscopic specks of matter found on the lower left hem of his gray t-shirt. They bring in a controversial crime scene reconstructionist who categorizes these microscopic dots as high-velocity impact spatter. The state builds their entire legal foundation on the claim that these specific dots prove David stood mere inches away during the fatal attack. Defense attorneys counter this narrative with immense frustration, providing detailed forensic reports showing the specks are simply transfer stains. They demonstrate exactly how the fabric of his shirt brushed against his family members when he frantically reached down to check them for signs of life. The state investigators deliberately refuse to entertain this perfectly logical explanation. They ignore the indisputable timeline established by 11 separate witnesses at the church gymnasium. The local prosecutors file formal charges, demanding a trial based on a profound misinterpretation of physical science. The community watches in disbelief as a grieving father is stripped of his dignity and labeled a monster by the very system he once swore to protect. Back at the sealed crime scene, a crucial piece of physical evidence rests on the cold concrete floor of the garage, just inches away from the victims tucked underneath a discarded blanket. Investigators find a gray prison-issued sweatshirt. The collar of this garment carries clear, collectible biological material left behind by the person who wore it. The sleeves bear the unmistakable label of the Indiana Department of Corrections, pointing a massive neon sign toward a known criminal element. David Cam never served time in prison, nor did he own any state-issued clothing of this nature. Standard investigative procedure dictates that this unknown garment must undergo immediate and rigorous laboratory testing to identify the true intruder. The detectives in charge of the scene deliberately choose to ignore this glaring physical clue. They place the sweatshirt into a brown paper evidence bag, log it into the property room, and leave it sitting on a dusty shelf. The prosecution builds their entire first trial strategy in the year 2002 around the disputed T-shirt specs, actively burying the existence of the prison garment. They paint David as an arrogant mastermind who somehow fooled 11 men and committed an atrocity in a tiny, impossible window of time. The jury, swaying under the weight of authoritative badges and pseudo-scientific jargon, delivers a guilty verdict. David is remanded to the state penitentiary, beginning an agonizing fight for his life while the true predator walks the streets completely unrestricted. Inside the maximum security unit, David spends 23 hours a day locked inside a steel cage, forced to process the total destruction of his family alone. His legal team immediately files extensive appellate briefs, systematically dismantling the junk science presented in the courtroom. They demand access to the physical evidence completely ignored during the initial sweep of the suburban garage. Defense attorneys file a specific court order compelling the state laboratory to finally test the biological material left on the collar of the gray prison sweatshirt. The bureaucratic machinery of the justice system grinds at an agonizing pace, stalling the testing process through endless procedural delays and jurisdiction arguments. Prosecutors fight the motion at every turn, clinging fiercely to their original narrative to protect the reputation of the local precinct. David watches the seasons change through a narrow frosted window in his cell, maintaining constant communication with his attorneys despite the crushing psychological weight of his confinement. He studies law books in the prison library, charting a path to shatter the web of confirmation bias constructed by his former peers. His unwavering insistence on his own innocence forces his legal team to push the appellate courts to the absolute limit. The relentless pressure finally cracks the stone wall built by the prosecutors, forcing the state crime lab to extract the biological material from the fabric. Technicians place the extracted sample into the national database, setting off a chain reaction that will completely dismantle the official timeline. In the early months of the year 2005, the national database registers a definitive match to the material on the sweatshirt collar. The system identifies the donor as Charles Boney, a convicted felon with an extensive violent criminal record. Boney carries a notorious reputation across the state, widely known by law enforcement as the shoe bandit for his habit of holding victims at gunpoint to steal their footwear. He had been released from a state correctional facility just weeks before the tragedy in Georgetown. The geographic footprint of his previous crimes places his operational zone dangerously close to the quiet cul-de-sac where the Cam family lived. Boney possesses a well-documented history of attacking vulnerable individuals in isolated spaces. His physical presence in the Cam garage on the night of September 28th is now an absolute, irrefutable scientific fact. A rational, uncompromised police department would view this breakthrough as the ultimate key to exonerating an innocent man. The defense team prepares the necessary paperwork for an immediate release, confident that the nightmare has reached its logical end. The discovery of a known violent felon at the exact location of the attack completely shatters the state timeline and the disputed high-velocity spatter theory. David expects to walk out of the prison gates and begin the impossible task of rebuilding his shattered life. The local prosecutors receive the scientific report and make a decision that defies all bounds of basic logic and human decency. Instead of admitting their catastrophic failure, the state authorities doubled down on their original target. They refused to drop the charges against David, actively choosing to protect their initial flawed investigation from public ruin. The district attorney constructs an entirely new, deeply absurd legal theory to explain away the presence of the convicted felon. They publicly declare that David Cam, a former state trooper with an impeccable professional record, secretly hired Charles Boney to carry out the attack. Investigators cannot produce a single phone record, bank transaction, or eyewitness, placing these two men in the same room prior to the tragedy. They ignore the strict social and geographical boundaries separating the suburban trooper from the career criminal. To secure this impossible narrative, prosecutors offer Boney a highly controversial plea agreement in exchange for his testimony against David. Boney changes his story multiple times during interrogations, initially denying he was ever at the house before suddenly remembering a complex conspiracy. The state actively coaches the real predator, polishing his fabricated testimony to fit the exact dimensions of their new legal strategy. This egregious manipulation of the justice system transforms a tragic failure of police work into a deliberate, malicious framing of an innocent man. The state drags David Cam back into the courtroom for a second trial in the year 2006. The defense team methodically exposes the total lack of connection between their client and the convicted felon sitting at the witness stand. They highlight the shifting, contradictory statements Boney provides under oath, pointing out how his testimony conveniently adapts to fill the gaping holes in the state timeline. Attorneys present clear evidence showing Boney left his own distinct footprints in the garage, perfectly matching the unique tread pattern of his signature stolen footwear. The prosecution relentlessly hammers the jury with the same disputed T-shirt specs from the first trial, combining it with the newly invented conspiracy theory. They utilize the sheer volume of their authority to overwhelm the jury, painting a convoluted picture of a rogue cop and a hired mercenary. The psychological torture inflicted on David reaches an unimaginable peak as he sits motionless, forced to watch the true architect of his family's destruction point an accusing finger at him. Despite the staggering lack of corroborating evidence, the jury returns a second guilty verdict. The judge sentences David to life in prison, sending him back to the bleak confines of the maximum security facility. The state politicians celebrate the conviction, convinced they have permanently buried the glaring errors of their own police department. David returns to his tiny concrete cell, absorbing a second massive blow from a justice system completely blinded by institutional pride. The fight for freedom restarts from square one, demanding an incredible reserve of mental endurance to survive the coming legal battles. The defense attorneys refuse to surrender to the corrupt machinery of the local jurisdiction and take their fight directly to the highest legal authority in the state. They file a massive appeal with the Indiana Supreme Court, detailing the severe prosecutorial misconduct and the admission of highly prejudicial evidence during the second trial. The appellate lawyers focus intensely on how the lower court allowed prosecutors to introduce speculative theories regarding David's private life that had zero factual connection to the events in the garage. They document every instance where the presiding judge overruled valid objections, creating an inherently biased courtroom environment. The Supreme Court justices review the trial transcripts and recognize the profound structural flaws infecting the prosecution strategy. In the year 2009, the High Court issues a stunning ruling that overturns the second conviction entirely. The justices explicitly state that the trial court committed reversible errors by allowing the state to poison the jury with irrelevant and highly damaging character attacks. This monumental ruling strips the local prosecutors of their second victory, forcing them to either drop the charges or attempt a third prosecution. True to their entrenched culture of institutional arrogance, the state prosecutors refuse to concede defeat. They announce their intention to try David Cam for a third time, extending his unjust incarceration into its second decade. The local precinct prepares to recycle their discredited forensic experts and the shifting testimony of Charles Boney for one final desperate battle. The grand architectural columns of the Boone County Courthouse cast long shadows over the pavement in the late summer of the year 2013. Inside the sprawling wood-paneled courtroom, the air hangs heavy with the weight of a 13-year legal siege. David Camm takes his seat at the heavy oak defense table for his third and final trial. He wears the deep physical and psychological scars of a man robbed of his entire world and locked inside a concrete box for over a decade. The defense team approaches the wooden podium armed with a mountain of irrefutable scientific data. They launch a meticulously structured counteroffensive designed to completely dismantle the ever-changing narrative constructed by the state. The attorneys direct the attention of the jury to the glaring spatial and temporal impossibilities of the prosecution timeline. They lay out the precise physical distances between the church gymnasium and the suburban cul-de-sac. The defense maps out every ticking second of the evening of September 28th, proving the absolute physical impossibility of the state theory. They expose the profound tunnel vision that infected the initial investigators from the moment they stepped onto the driveway. The jury watches intently as defense lawyers display the gray prison-issued sweatshirt on a sterile courtroom table. They point out exactly how the local precinct deliberately bypassed this glaring biological clue to protect their own fabricated narrative. The courtroom falls into a stunned silence as the sheer magnitude of the systemic corruption is laid bare. The defense calls a roster of elite forensic specialists to the witness stand. These experts systematically destroy the junk science used by the state. World-renowned specialists in fluid dynamics examine the microscopic specks on the gray t-shirt. They deliver a devastating blow to the prosecution timeline. The experts prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that these marks are standard transfer stains. They detail the precise mechanics of the fabric absorption. A devastated father simply reached into a dark garage to check his family for signs of life. The original state reconstructionist is completely exposed as a purveyor of highly biased pseudoscience. The focus then shifts entirely to the documented actions of Charles Boney. The defense presents the unique tread patterns of the footwear left on the cold concrete floor. They match these distinct impressions perfectly to the exact shoes worn by the known felon. The attorneys highlight the staggering absurdity of the state conspiracy theory. They demand the prosecutors explain why a decorated trooper would hire a chaotic parole. The jury sees the horrific truth hiding behind the pristine facade of the local precinct. The authorities were entirely willing to offer a violent predator a shield of legal protection. The relentless presentation of undisputed facts finally shatters the fragile web of lies. On October 24th, the year 2013, the heavy wooden doors of the jury room swing open, signaling the end of a grueling deliberation process. The foreperson stands tall in the silent courtroom and reads a verdict that finally realigns the fractured scales of justice. The jury finds David Camm not guilty of all charges, delivering a total and absolute exoneration. The profound weight of 13 lost years crashes down on the former trooper as the judge orders his immediate release from state custody. He walks out of the imposing stone courthouse and steps into the crisp autumn air as a free man, leaving the chains of a corrupt prosecution behind him forever. The undeniable physical evidence that finally secured his freedom also permanently seals the fate of the true predator. Charles Boney faces his own reckoning in a separate judicial proceeding, stripped of the protective cover previously provided by the desperate local prosecutors. A separate jury convicts the career criminal for his solo role in the tragedy, and a judge sentences him to 225 years in the state penitentiary. The heavy steel doors of the maximum security facility lock behind Boney, permanently removing a highly dangerous threat from the streets of Indiana. The resolution provides a hollow victory, as the true perpetrator remained free for years while an innocent father suffered in a cage. The community is left to grapple with the terrifying reality that their trusted law enforcement officials actively enabled a violent felon to roam unchecked. The local precinct sacrificed public safety to protect their own deeply flawed theories. The badge that once represented ultimate safety now carries a permanent stain of institutional betrayal. The fight for accountability does not end with the reading of the final verdict. David Cam immediately files a massive federal civil rights lawsuit against the investigators, the prosecutors, and the state authorities who orchestrated his wrongful imprisonment. His legal team documents every single protocol violation, hidden piece of evidence, and fabricated theory used to destroy his life. The sheer volume of documented corruption forces the local county government to issue a settlement of $450,000 to the exonerated man. The broader civil case against the state grinds through the federal court system for almost another decade. In the year 2022, the state of Indiana finally waves the white flag, agreeing to pay a massive settlement of $4.6 million. No amount of financial compensation can ever replace the family stolen from a loving father or the 13 years he spent staring at a cinderblock wall. The case stands today as a permanent, chilling monument to the catastrophic dangers of confirmation bias and unchecked police authority. It serves as a textbook warning of how institutional arrogance can twist a tragic crime scene into a battleground of manipulated science. The refusal of authorities to admit a single error allowed a true predator to escape justice while a grieving man endured unimaginable psychological torture. Such gross miscarriages of justice shatter the fragile trust between a community and the very people sworn to protect it. Sadly, the phenomenon of authorities bending facts to fit their own skewed narratives is not confined to the quiet streets of Indiana. We must now step back and examine the broader implications of these terrifying systemic failures in our final conclusion. When the shield of law enforcement becomes a weapon of bias or self-preservation, the pursuit of truth is always the first casualty. Thank you for watching. If you want to explore more cases where the justice system turned into a nightmare, click the video on your screen right now.